The islands of Indonesia. Refuge for countless species of plants and animals, including some of the most spectacular reptiles in the world. In the rainforests of Sulawesi, 80% of all the species are endemic, found nowhere else on Earth. And these islands are home to 15% of the world's coral reefs. In the mid-19th century, a young English zoologist spent 3 years here. Alfred Russell Wallace discovered that nature in the region was divided by a mysterious barrier. 150 years later, a new generation of scientist explorers has come to solve another mystery. This time, it's beneath the sea. They're diving into a world that was closed to the Victorian explorer, to see if species are separated in the ocean as well. An expedition to the depths of the Wallace Line. Patambai, on the Indonesian island of Bali. A team of marine biologists have returned to the region where Alfred Russell Wallace made his discoveries 150 years ago. They want to answer some new questions about evolution. Matthias Kopfmüller and his scientists are ready to launch their expedition. Their research vessel, Ananda, sets off for the first morning's dive. Alfred Russell Wallace had noticed how different the plants and animals were in different parts of the Malayan Archipelago. When he collated his data, he realized that a mysterious line seemed to cut the region in half. On one side were the mammals, on the other the big reptiles. There must be something under the water keeping the species apart. But Wallace had no way of looking. Matthias Kopfmüller's new expedition can.
Wir befinden uns jetzt auf der Wallace-Linie.
We're now positioned right over the Wallace Line, the imaginary line Wallace plotted back then. The Australasian animals are on one side and the East Asian animals are on the other, at least above the water. Now we have the technology to establish how things are underwater, to find out whether the wildlife to the east and west of the line is separated by a deep sea trench and by ocean currents.
It's literally an expedition into the unknown. The Wallace Line is actually the Wallace Band. It marks the boundary between two continents, Asia and Oceania. At its narrowest, it passes between two islands, Bali and Lombok. Wallacea, as this region is known, has one of the richest ecosystems on Earth. Wallace noted in his diary that although these islands were separated only by the straits, they were more different than England and Japan, even though Lombok and Bali were no more than 30 miles apart. Russell wanted to know the reason for this extraordinary diversity and why it happened here. (1855). He solved the mystery after 4 years of work and observation. Traveling from island to island was a sure way to catch malaria. But even racked by the fever, he would not give up on his search for the origin of species. He needed to know the purpose of such astounding variety. How could it have developed? Where was the evidence for a divine creator? Wallace already knew that islands seemed to encourage unusual forms of life, especially here in the Malay Archipelago. And now, he had the insight of his life. That as a result of the struggle for existence and the natural selection of individual animals, entirely new species would inevitably develop. It was a revolutionary thought. As Wallace wrote down his idea, another man had long been working on the same theory, Charles Darwin. One of the most famous scientists in the history of the world, the spiritual father of the theory of evolution. His book on the evolution of species changed the world forever. But Darwin had already been working for 20 years on his book, constantly delaying the final decision to publish. As a clergyman, Darwin feared the public reaction to his theories. This was a time when the church still taught that the world was created in 7 days. And most scientists believed the Earth was no more than 4,000 years old. In 3 days and nights of fever, Wallace's work was completed. All his ideas were condensed into a single paper. It was just 20 pages long. Russell signed it and addressed it to the leading zoologist in England. Soon after receiving it, Darwin decided to publish on the origin of species. Was this a response to Wallace's ideas? That may never be known. But Wallace is now a legend only to the experts, the founder of island geography and discoverer of the Wallace Line. And the Wallace Line is what the new team is looking for. They want to know how far down it extends, and how a linking element like water can separate the species that live in it. From the early morning, there's been hectic activity on board the 2 research vessels. Everyone is concentrating on this first dive. Onno Gross is a marine biologist. He's the scientific leader of the expedition, and he's confident of getting results.
I'm pretty sure we'll find differences between the animals separated by the Wallace Line. We'll make tests, identify and map corals, take sediment and sand samples, and I'm pretty sure we'll also find new species.
This is an area that has very rarely been dived. The team know they will need to cope with extreme depths and powerful currents. A new gas and air mix will allow the divers to spend more time below the surface. They can dive deeper and explore a greater area. They'll need that extra capability. They know that the Wallace Line forms a deep undersea canyon here, and the strong currents will slow them down. The nutrient-rich waters forced at high speed through these narrows make this a rich habitat for a multitude of species. White-tipped reef sharks, the top predators here, can wait lazily for their prey, fed ample oxygen by the rushing current. They feed on creatures that eat still smaller fish and plankton. An extremely rich mix of marine species exists here, poised above the abyss. And many individual fish show unexpected variations. This is a lionfish. Its stripes are usually bright red. The scientists have never seen these colors before. A manta glides by. Their undersides are usually white, a perfect camouflage when viewed from beneath, but this one's is black. Are these unique genetic mutations or completely new species? The citizens of Wallacea are somehow bigger, stranger, or more colorful than sea creatures in other shallow ocean waters. As they descend, the divers find more and more strange forms of life. Feather starfish, strange creatures with tentacles like feathers, dance past the undersea cliff sides. These are scenes that Wallace or Darwin could never have witnessed. Since their time, zoologists have identified about 230,000 different marine species. But scientists believe that between 1 and 10 million species still remain to be discovered. On the edge of the rock face, the marine biologists take samples of corals that have been here for thousands of years, and samples of the rock itself. The microscopic creatures living on them will be genetically analyzed in the lab. They're making an inventory of the undersea cliffs of the Wallace Line, a sort of marine census. And this is a densely populated region. This area has been a rich tropical sea for hundreds of millions of years, a hothouse for species development, and a boundary between continents with very different species. This has made it a true cradle of marine evolution. Special plastic tubes called multicorers are used to take samples of the different layers of sediment. One tubeful can contain up to 1,000 foraminifers, tiny single-celled creatures, 90% of them new to science. These will be tested on both sides of the line. Lifting bags transport the first samples to the surface. The first dive was successful and relatively easy. Now they want to go deeper, into the canyon where the two sides of the line meet. There's a steep drop for several hundred meters. And on the way down, the divers expect to meet severe turbulence. From the water surface to a depth of about 30 meters, the current runs at 8 knots. That's almost 14 kilometers an hour. This current drags everything that isn't attached into the open ocean or pulls it down into the depths. The divers are exposed to it, and it's more dangerous than it looks. In fact, the current could be deadly. One of the divers loses his grip on the rocks and is fast pulled away by the current. To panic now could be fatal. It takes calm nerves to get the situation under control. It's a warning. These currents deserve respect.
We managed to get something, but it's going to be tough. We thought it would be a bit easier than this.
It's been a sobering start.
Wow.
I've never ever been in a current like that. Really, it was at least 5 to 7 knots. Crazy. Up current, down current. No fun at all.
No one thought the currents might make them stop working. They'll need a change of plan.
I really think the next time we go down, we should try to attach decompression bottles every 10 meters. I think it's psychologically important. And we should also bring out safety lines when we're in the current. Heavy buoys with weights, so that we always have something to hang on to. Or we should lay lines from the rocks into the sea, 20, 30 meters long, so that if I'm swept away, I at least know there'll be something that will give me a bit of safety.
Back to the edge of the abyss. The divers become mountain climbers, each step secured by steel cables. Meter by meter, they work their way down against the current. This time things go better. They pass through the current layer, and after 30 meters, they can slowly descend. At 40 meters, a quick safety check. Everything's fine. On they go. At 60 meters, they reach the first caves. Caves and grottos are especially important for the expedition. They're often completely closed, unique ecosystems. Life forms can develop here in peace for millions of years, untroubled by the nearby currents or the depths and distances of the oceans. Sponges and bacteria grow on the cavern walls in thick red mats. The energy they create in metabolizing is the basis of all life in this region, the region of Wallacea. A lionfish stares at the intruder, the first human he has ever set eyes on. Perhaps the analysis of this small horn coral will provide the genetic proof that the Wallace Line exists underwater, as a completely natural frontier. Or perhaps it's not a frontier but an edge, where changes take place faster, ripped along by the current. It's time for the divers to return to the surface. Rising to the surface from 60 meters requires a number of stops for decompression. Otherwise, there's a serious risk of the bends, where bubbles of nitrogen form in the blood as water pressure lessens. They can cause embolisms throughout the body, resulting in paralysis or even death. But by building these pauses into the dive, they can use them to continue their research, taking samples for later analysis. Back among the inhabitants of the shallows, the team are beginning to understand what the Wallace Line really is. And the currents seem to play a crucial role. Back on board, the samples are given a first examination. The simplest one-celled animals may give the clearest indication how a barrier like the Wallace Line works. Algae, sediment, stone and coral samples are washed, separated and then packed for further examination on the mainland. Nothing gets left out. The researchers also bring up live fish. They have been painlessly and harmlessly anesthetized.
How long will it be out?
For about another hour. We gave him quite a high dose. He was a bit more mobile earlier.
This little scorpion fish wakes up quicker than expected. A tiny sample is taken from his fin before he's thrown back. The labs will use its DNA to test how widely this species is distributed. Using these DNA tests, the structures of a population can be established in incredible detail and could prove further evidence for an underwater boundary.
Wallacea
is one of the hotspots of biodiversity. The oceans of the Earth are colonized from here, with coral and fish larvae. This is a nodal point that radiates a special energy, and thus holds a special importance for the oceans as a whole. We don't fully understand it yet. That's why we're here.
Few other regions can compare to Wallacea in biodiversity. The Caribbean has just 10% of the species of coral found here. This is a newly discovered species of starfish. Since Devonian times, 400 million years ago, Wallacea has always been an area of sea and of tropical warmth. That makes it unique in the world, and it gave the animals and plants the time and the conditions to develop in remarkable ways. By comparison, the Caribbean is an evolutionary baby. The expedition has now been diving here for 2 weeks. Time to move across to the other side of the Wallace Line, the Australian side. Even this short journey needs careful plotting. It takes skill to find the safest possible crossing between Bali and Lombok. The crew expect a powerful swell, one of the effects of the strong current just below the surface. And then they receive a message.
Okay, yes, we definitely need to do more on those. Thanks, over and out.
Their second vessel, the Al Isra, has engine trouble. And the promised swell has arrived, even on a windless day. With no engine and no wind for the sails, the Al Isra drifts helplessly. Nothing for it but to attach a line and tow her to calmer waters. For a theoretical barrier, the Wallace Line is quite an obstacle. The engine is soon repaired, but nevertheless it's decided that the two ships will separate. The Al Isra will stay here on the Asian side of the line. The Ananda continues eastwards.
We'll see you in 2 weeks on Komodo, okay? You come from the east and we'll come from the west.
The crew of the Ananda drop a buoy with a satellite transmitter overboard. This is a perfect opportunity to test the strength and direction of the current over days and weeks.
40 Jahre nach Wallace heute Ähnliches wie über Wasser damals unter Wasser festgestellt wird. Die Trennung zwischen den orientalischen und australischen Faunen.
The difficulty of examining the distribution of marine species is of course quite different from the problems Wallace faced. After all, the situation is clear for land animals. They can't get from one island to another because there's water in between, or too much water. But marine species spread in their larva phase, and they're distributed by drifting. That means we shall have to use the most refined technical methods to distinguish the creatures from each side of the line, and to be sure that they are really different.
So the schooner Ananda set sail for the Australian, oceanic side of the line. This is deepest Wallacea. It's a journey into another world. The world of reptiles and of the reticulated python, the longest reptile on Earth. These snakes can reach 12 meters in length in favorable conditions. The local people fear them for their strength and aggressiveness. They can still be found in places unchanged since Wallace explored here 150 years ago. Once, reptiles were the dominant form of life on Earth. And many of today's species have barely changed since the time of the dinosaurs. In most of the Earth's regions, there are very few reptiles left. But here, in the rivers and dense rainforests of Wallacea on the Australian side of the line, they still dominate life. There have never been any big meat-eating mammals on the Australian eastern side of the Wallace Line. So now, reptiles, like this saltwater crocodile, are at the top of the food chain. They're bigger and more fearsome here than anywhere else. Snake expert Mark Aulier doesn't want to miss this chance to research into some of his favorite species. He's left the ship on a special mission. He's looking for deep and complex cave systems. The breeding grounds and nurseries for the giant snakes.
Da vorne ist schon was.
Caves help unique forms of life to evolve on land as well as in the sea. And this great cave system on the island of Flores is home to countless microorganisms, millipedes, scorpions and spiders. Like this giant tailless whip scorpion, as big as the palm of a hand, but completely harmless. And this is a perfect habitat for thousands and thousands of bats. In slits, holes, and on ledges and outcrops, they nestle and hang suspended in the fetid atmosphere. And they're a prime source of food for young reticulated pythons, who use them to hone their hunting skills. Pythons don't poison their victims. They wrap themselves around their prey at lightning speed and strangle them. So they're not easy to catch. No luck with this first one.
It was 3.5 meters long, nearly 4.
Why didn't you grab its neck?
Because if I let go of its tail, it gets away.
Things work better on the second go. This python is still young, but it's already longer than a man. And it doesn't like having the tables turned.
So, here it is. It must be about, I'd say it's 3 meters long, maybe just over. When they're that size, they still eat smaller prey like bats. When he reaches 4 meters, it'll probably leave the cave and search for larger prey.
Aulia starts his examination.
Now you can see its windpipe. The inside of the mouth looks healthy.
These snakes have been here for 140 million years. Smaller snake species developed poisonous fangs much more recently, probably to kill fast-moving land mammals. No one is quite sure how snakes originally evolved. They probably developed from small creatures living underground. The loss of their limbs and their extraordinary length could be an evolutionary adaptation to the narrow passages, nooks and crannies of a cave.
Ich bin auf 3 Meter, 3 Meter genau. Genau 3 Meter. Genau 3 Meter.
This young python will soon leave its nursery and go out into Wallacea in search of prey.
Okay, sie bewegt sich.
Today, DNA analysis helps us understand the evolution and distribution of snakes like these pythons. Mark Aulia has already discovered 2 new species of reticulated python on islands of Wallacea, isolated by sea and currents. But the scientists are not the only ones who've discovered the habitat of the pythons. Poachers, smugglers and dealers are also after the rare animals. Mark Aulia uses his contacts with illegal dealers, usually Chinese immigrants, to monitor this illicit trade. It helps that he speaks several local dialects fluently. The dealers aren't interested in live snakes. They can make a fortune selling the skins. For the python, it means a long wait and a cruel fate. For only when the snake has molted is the new skin at its best, ready to be harvested. This 5-meter snake tries to resist, but there will be no escape. On the black market, a snake like this is worth $1,000. The snake is condemned by its own beauty. Such deliberate destruction seems a crime at a time of wholesale extinctions. For 70 species disappear every day. That's 500 every week, and 27,000 in a year, lost forever. Thankfully, most of Wallace's animals escape the poachers, and in the wild, the reticular python has evolved a special solution to ensure its survival. It has taken to the sea. This way, it can make the most of living in an archipelago of thousands of islands. Skimming between the reefs, islets and sandbanks, completely at home. In the search for new territory, it even swims out into the ocean. Individual pythons are often found surviving far from their original habitat. They have colonized every island in the Indo-Malaysian region, even the smallest and most remote. And they're not the only migrants. The ocean currents transport fruits, seeds and nuts over thousands of kilometers until they make landfall on some deserted island. Often, there's a stowaway on a bundle of twigs or creepers. A single log or a branch torn off in a storm can serve as a natural raft that may be underway for weeks or even months. Small land creatures cross seas using only this flotsam and jetsam as a lifeboat. And as soon as they land, there's another struggle for survival, which sometimes can be almost too successful. This prehistoric-looking giant was once an ordinary lizard until it landed on a particular island in the archipelago. This is the Komodo dragon. With no other predators, it grew and grew. A mature male can be more than 3 meters long. The Komodo archipelago is surrounded by particularly strong currents, completely impassable for such large, unwieldy animals. And so, as they grew, the dragons became prisoners of their own island, prisoners of their own size. And yet, a close Wallacean relative developed quite differently. This is Varanus salvator, the water monitor. He developed a much slimmer and longer body than his landlocked cousin. His long tail has developed flat sides to make him a perfect underwater swimmer. An adult dragon can dive for up to 20 minutes. It's hard to believe that this is actually a land creature and closely related to the Komodo dragon. Slipping through the water like a prehistoric shadow, he gives us an idea of how the seas looked when the dinosaurs ruled the earth. His amazing swimming skills have made the water monitor the most widely distributed lizard on Earth. The Ananda has anchored in a quiet bay on Flores Island. Matthias Kopfmüller is following a hint by a zoologist friend that this island has its own giant lizard. And Mark Aulier wants to see for himself. They need to walk to the eastern tip of the island. They've given themselves just one day out from the expedition. Soon, Aulier finds signs of a large reptile's presence. And the flock of flying foxes up ahead may be a clue. Normally, these giant bats sleep during the day, suspended in the trees. A predator must have disturbed them. And then they see it. A giant lizard in the undergrowth. A pale yellow, 3-meter-long dragon. The splashes of pink and grey in its scales match perfectly with its environment. Evidence that this lizard has been isolated here for millions of years. Yet this is a Komodo dragon. It probably came here from Komodo when a land bridge still connected the two islands. When the waters rose, the two animals developed separately into different species, and the giant of Flores gained its new coat. The visitors mustn't get too excited. If this animal is related to the Komodo dragon, the chances are it's extremely aggressive. But these animals, and their cousins on Komodo, that have lived here since the time of the dinosaurs, are well on the way to extinction. Back on the ship, they're planning the dives to the east of the Wallace Line, on the Asian side.
Watch out for the currents. We know they increase towards the west, so don't forget your safety lines.
Don't worry, we'll be careful.
Conditions here call for some unusual solutions. The divers are pulled through a tropical lagoon on an underwater trapeze. It's less rocky on this side of the line, so the team can inspect a greater area at higher speed. A plankton net is dragged through open waters. It scoops up innumerable thousands of these tiny plants and animals, the start of the marine food chain. If they find something interesting, the others dive down to take a sample. Reef fish are anesthetized with oil of violets before being taken on board for examination. The plankton net fills up in the open ocean. A manta ray rises from the depths. It's following the clouds of plankton. It couldn't survive without them. And neither could we. A quarter of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere is produced by phytoplankton, the plant part of this gigantic biomass.
Weil da hängt es jetzt fest, die Quallen. Wir sehen irgendwie das delikate Plankton.
And the exact composition of the plankton here in Wallacea is once again influenced by the fast-moving waters.
A shrimp.
Yes, brought along by the current.
Ja.
Every night, thick clouds of these minuscule animals and plants rise towards the surface of Wallacea's waters, where they're distributed by the current. A ribbed jellyfish, a greedy filtration eater, feeds here to its heart's content. Plankton swarms around a giant drifting salp, a form of jellyfish, a live colony of thousands of individual animals. A swarm of salps can measure up to 100,000 square kilometers and can absorb almost 4,000 tons of CO2 a day. This is a living stream of nourishment, transported by the ocean currents around the entire globe. Or just as far as the next coral reef, where other animals, attached to the rocks, wait for easy prey. Feather stars, like ghostly flowers, stretch their tentacles into the current. Thousands of hungry mouths waiting for food supplies from the open sea. Scientists are discovering more and more life in the oceans. Up to 20,000 individual plants and animals, and thousands of different species live in every liter of this water. And each has a role in the ecosystem. Marine organisms like this fire sea urchin are responsible for many important metabolic processes in the sea. Each one of these strange creatures has a contribution to make to the biochemical cycles of the entire planet. Two weeks later, the Ananda is on its way back to its sister ship, the Al Isra, which has been waiting on the western side of the Wallace Line. The scientific evidence of a biological frontier under the water is beginning to arrive. Tests have been carried out on the samples by the Australian Institute of Marine Science. They've been checking for inherited characteristics. DNA analysis should show great differences between the animals and plants on the east and west sides of the Wallace Line. And the confirmation comes in a radio conversation with the lab.
So you received the samples we sent a couple of weeks ago over?
Yes, of course, we received the samples.
Okay, and
over.
did you have a chance to do some first analysis on those?
Positive. We did a genetic test. Over.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. So how does that compare with previous publications on those issues?
Perfect. Over.
Okay. So basically we can say that we have first hints that the Wallace line is confirmed with these genetic analysis. Over.
Yes, you're totally right. Great differences.
Okay,
Over.
yes, thanks very much. Over and out. Bye.
Little doubt remains.
That would mean what Wallace found out 150 years ago also holds good beneath the water. There is a marine Wallace line.
The expedition has been a success.
Gut. Okay. Super. Danke. Das war's schon wieder. Danke.
And now it's time to pack up. The northeast monsoon will soon make further work impossible. Wallacea will increasingly become a threatened habitat. The variety of species is already being destroyed by humans. Wallace recognized that 150 years ago. But if we lose the opportunity to study the interdependency of animals, plants, and habitats in a place like this, we will be missing a chance to help secure our own future.